That's how much money vanished from the American tourism industry in 2025. Because 20 million Canadians individually decided they'd rather vacation anywhere else than the United States. Not because of a recession, not because of exchange rates, because Donald Trump spent an entire year treating Canada like a subordinate territory that should be grateful for American attention. And Canadians responded by taking their vacation dollars elsewhere. But here's what Trump didn't expect. This isn't just about hurt feelings or temporary political disagreements. This is about the permanent restructuring of North American tourism. And the numbers are so devastating that American senators are literally traveling to Ottawa, begging for the boycott to end. Ski resorts in Montana are watching their Canadian bookings collapse by 44%. Hotels in Florida are seeing 20% drops in visitors. Restaurants in Maine are reporting their worst year ever, worse than COVID, all because the President of the United States kept saying he wanted to annex Canada as the 51st state, and Canadians took it personally. This wasn't organized by the Canadian government. This wasn't mandated by law. This was 20 million people individually deciding that if Trump views them with contempt, they'll spend their money somewhere that actually wants them. The United States Travel Association forecasted a 32% decline in international tourism spending for 2025. That's $5.7 billion in losses compared to the previous year, and they attribute this decline primarily to one factor: Canadians aren't coming anymore. Think about this. Canadians are the largest group of international tourists to the United States. 28% of all foreign visitors. $20.5 billion in spending in 2024 alone. 20.4 million visitors crossing the border annually. In 2025, that river of tourism dollars became a trickle. October data shows return trips by Canadians to the United States dropped 24% for air travel and 30% for land travel. Not down a few points, down by a quarter to a third. Road travel from Canada fell 38% in May. Air travel down 22% in June, the fifth consecutive month of year-over-year declines, each month worse than the one before, as the boycott momentum built. A Longwoods International study found that 60% of Canadians were less likely to travel to the United States due to American policies and political statements. Of those, 36% had already cancelled planned trips. In Quebec alone, 45% of planned US travel was cancelled. That represents $3 billion in economic losses from just one Canadian province. These aren't hypothetical numbers. These are actual trips cancelled, actual hotel rooms empty, actual restaurant tables unfilled. And the American tourism industry is in crisis. Montana saw border crossings down 19%. One hotel reported a $38,000 loss after a Canadian sports team cancelled its reservation for 70 rooms. Credit card spending in Kalispell plunged 39% in 2025. Florida saw visitor numbers plummet 20% in the second quarter. Real estate agents reported Canadians putting homes up for sale due to the current environment between Canada and the United States. New Hampshire saw a 30% decrease in Canadian visitors. State-run campground reservations down 71% in the first 5 months of 2025. One hotel owner in North Conway reported 30% of rooms empty during summer weekends that usually sell out. Maine business owners described catastrophic losses. Old Orchard Beach reported a 50% drop in Canadian visitors. The worst year we have had. We have never had a year like that. Even worse than COVID, said business owner Moshe Agam. Hawaii experienced a 9.4% decline in Canadian visitors in the first 7 months of 2025, and a 27% decline compared to pre-pandemic 2019 levels. Spending by Canadian visitors fell 4.9% from $668 million. Restaurants reported Canadian arrivals to Maui were down 28%. Vermont accommodations, New Jersey campgrounds, Niagara Falls hotels all reported similar stories. Bookings down, revenues down, staff cuts, economic pain spreading through communities that built their business models around reliable Canadian tourism. But here's what makes this boycott different. This is personal. Individual Canadians making conscious choices to avoid the United States because Trump made them feel unwelcome. Lena Yousfi, a Vancouver attorney, typically visits Hawaii 4 times a year. She used to live in Maui and was considering buying a 2-bedroom condo there. After Trump imposed tariffs and repeated his wish to turn Canada into the 51st state, she cancelled all trips. Obviously, out of loyalty to Canada and our values and just holding our ground, we had to cancel. A woman from British Columbia forfeited a $5,000 deposit to cancel a 5-week vacation to Palm Springs. Not rescheduled, cancelled, taking a $5,000 loss rather than spend money in the United States. A Florida motel owner reported customers dropping $1,000 deposits to choose Cuba instead. I have seen a customer dropping a $1,000 deposit to choose to go to Cuba instead. Canadians are choosing Cuba, a country under American sanctions, over Florida because they'd rather support a Caribbean island than give money to Trump's America. One Ontario retiree who traveled to Orlando every winter for 20 years cancelled his annual trip in March. By December, his position hadn't changed. Still no change, not going back. 20 years of loyalty, gone because of Trump's rhetoric. A Canadian sports team cancelled its reservation for 70 rooms and a 200-person dinner in Montana, costing one hotel $38,000. These aren't small individual decisions. These are group cancellations representing hundreds of thousands in lost revenue. Lorna Hunt, CEO of Great Canadian Holidays, stated that most US tours are dead in the water because Canadian customers backed out. The anger is not with the American people. The anger is with Donald Trump. If he's going to war with Canada, something we never asked for, an economic war, then why would they spend a nickel in the United States when they don't have to? An Ipsos poll found that 68% of Canadians thought less of the United States after Trump announced tariffs. Not disagreed with policy, thought less of the country itself. This isn't temporary political disagreement. This is fundamental reassessment of whether the United States deserves Canadian money, tourism, and goodwill. And here's the strategic nightmare. The boycott isn't keeping Canadians home. It's redirecting them elsewhere. A Snowbird Advisor survey found that 70% of Canadian snowbirds plan to visit the United States this winter, down from 82% last year. But 23% plan international destinations other than the United States, up from 12% last winter. The number planning overseas travel nearly doubled. Mexican resorts, Costa Rica, warmer European countries are all benefiting from Canadians looking for winter sunshine without the political baggage of supporting Trump. The Caribbean is seeing increased bookings. Even Cuba is gaining Canadian tourists who used to go to Florida. Provincial governments noted increased interest from Canadian tourists and deployed new advertising campaigns encouraging domestic travel. Manitoba increased tourism budgets by $4.5 million specifically to capture Canadians who might have gone to the US. British Columbia launched Beautiful British Columbia campaigns targeting residents who normally winter in Arizona or California. This internal redirection has economic benefits for Canada while simultaneously denying revenue to American businesses. Canadians aren't sacrificing vacations. They're spending money at home or in countries that treat them with respect. The shift is so significant that duty-free shops at the border, which depend entirely on Canadians crossing to shop in the United States, reported sales declines of 40 to 50% between January and April. One Surrey-based owner of a duty-free shop stated, "Our business has dropped over 80%, and now we have reduced our staff and reduced our working hours. This morning we are operating on a skeleton staff of only 3 to 4 people, when usually we have about 20 people working." 80% decline. From 20 staff to 3 people. That's not a downturn, that's collapse. These border businesses built their entire model around reliable Canadian cross-border shopping. Now they're fighting for survival. American tourism boards launched desperate campaigns. Montana, after initially abandoning Canadian tourism campaigns in summer when they received negative reactions, is trying again with a Canadian welcome pass offering discounts on hotels, restaurants, and attractions exclusively for Canadian visitors. "We miss you," the campaign pleads. The fact that they had to abandon their first attempt shows just how deep Canadian anger runs. Las Vegas rolled out week-long sales with special tourism discounts targeting Canadians. Buffalo, Seattle, upstate New York all launched campaigns with deals trying to demonstrate they still value Canadian visitors. Palm Springs put up signs across downtown reading "Palm Springs loves Canada," with the mayor noting Canadians spend $300 million a year in the region. California launched an entire state tourism campaign encouraging Canadians to visit. These aren't marketing efforts, these are emergency responses to economic crisis. But the campaigns aren't working because you can't discount your way out of insult. Senator Maggie Hassan led a 4-senator delegation to Ottawa in July to meet with Prime Minister Mark Carney and discuss the damage. American senators going to Canada to apologize for their president's behavior and plead for economic relief. The optics are stunning. American lawmakers begging their northern neighbor to resume tourism, the political damage is done, and the economic consequences are accelerating. The United States Travel Association estimates that even a 10% reduction in Canadian tourism means $2.1 billion in lost spending and 14,000 American jobs at risk. Current data suggests the actual decline is significantly worse than 10%. The damage is permanent. Tourism isn't like manufacturing where you restart production when conditions improve. Tourists who discover new destinations don't automatically return. Canadians who spent 2025 exploring alternatives have established new patterns. Consider this: a Canadian family that used to spend $8,000 on Florida vacations discovered Costa Rica offers better beaches, friendlier locals, and no political complications. Why would they return to Florida when their new destination exceeded expectations? The psychological shift runs deeper than economics. Canadian parents are teaching their children that America isn't the reliable neighbor they grew up believing it was. Young Canadians who might have developed lifelong American travel patterns are building preferences that exclude the United States entirely. A 25-year-old from Toronto who used to consider spring break in Miami now books trips to Portugal. A Calgary couple in their 30s discovered they prefer European ski resorts to Colorado. These aren't temporary substitutions. These are permanent preference changes that will persist for decades. The reputational damage to brand America extends beyond tourism. Every Canadian who cancelled a trip, forfeited a deposit, or changed vacation plans because they felt unwelcome remembers that feeling. Many won't forget even when Trump leaves office. The tourism boycott reveals how fundamentally the Canada-US relationship has changed. For generations, Canadians viewed America as a reliable partner and natural travel destination. That relationship was built on assumptions of mutual respect, shared values, and predictable behavior. Trump destroyed those assumptions, and once trust is gone, it doesn't return with leadership changes. The boycott demonstrates economic power that no trade negotiation can override. 20 million individual Canadians exercising consumer choice is soft power in reverse, where the smaller country punishes the larger through voluntary actions costing billions. This creates a strategic vulnerability America never anticipated. For decades, US policymakers assumed geographic proximity and economic integration meant Canada had no choice but to accept American behavior. The tourism boycott proves that assumption catastrophically wrong. Consumer sentiment is slow to change and harder to repair than government policy. You can't negotiate consumer preferences or sign agreements forcing people to vacation in your country. Rebuilding trust requires years of consistent behavior, something Trump's America has proven incapable of providing. The broader implications terrify American strategic planners. If Canada can successfully boycott US tourism, what's next? Canadian consumers choosing European products over American brands, Canadian businesses prioritizing non-American suppliers, Canadian investors avoiding US markets. The tourism boycott is just the beginning of a systematic Canadian effort to reduce dependence on an unreliable partner. And other American allies are watching carefully, learning that consumer boycotts can effectively punish American behavior without government coordination. Donald Trump spent 2025 insulting Canada, threatening annexation, treating Canadians with contempt. He assumed American power meant they had no alternative but acceptance. Instead, 20 million Canadians took their vacation dollars elsewhere. $5.7 billion vanished. Montana ski resorts plead for return. Florida hotels sit empty. Maine faces its worst tourism year ever. American senators travel to Ottawa apologizing. Tourism boards launch desperate "We miss you" campaigns. None of it works because you can't discount insult away. Canadians discovered alternatives: Mexican beaches, Costa Rican rainforests, European cities. They built new travel patterns, found better experiences, learned they don't need America for great vacations. Trump wanted to demonstrate dominance. He created a boycott teaching Canadians they're better off without America. The lesson extends beyond tourism to broader questions about economic and strategic dependence on an increasingly unreliable partner. This isn't temporary political disagreement. This is fundamental reassessment of America's worthiness of Canadian tourism, money, and goodwill. And increasingly, Canadians are deciding America simply isn't worth the trouble anymore.